Hi, welcome to my channel. Before I drift too far into the world of cinema, let me say a few words about my current project. This yarn's been sitting in my stash for a long time, unusual texture. I had absolutely no idea what to do with it, and after being relentlessly recruited by an avalanche of mesh sweater tutorials, I thought, why not? It's cotton, so there's little point in making something overly warm. And the structure of the yarn honestly intimidated me at first. But here we are. I have 3 skeins, 50 grams each. No idea if that'll be enough, but my intuition suggested adding another color. Partly for decoration, of course, but partly to avoid that classic situation where you run out of yarn and have to desperately improvise the sleeves at the very end. And they turn out to be too short. Happens more often than I'd like to admit. I decided to invent my own little super duper pattern just to avoid copying anyone. This is a simple combination of double crochet, treble crochet, and half double crochet stitches. Hopefully it turns out charming. Does this happen to you too when YouTube just randomly, out of nowhere, starts throwing movie scenes into your feed? Or is it just me? After my marathon of the best Harry Potter moments, I suddenly got a scene from Skyfall in my recommendations. I'm really into the Bron franchise, especially the Daniel Craig era as James Bond. I love absolutely everything about Skyfall. The theme song, the cast, the pacing, the screenplay. Daniel Craig, to me, he's the most perfectly cast Bond. He radiates that 007 agent charisma effortlessly. Take it or leave it. Javier Bardem was my personal cinematic revelation of 2012. No, I hadn't seen the movie No Country for Old Men before. Dame Judi Dench, formidable in every single film. I have watched Skyfall an unhealthy number of times, and I regret nothing. So I started wondering, what are those Skyfall coordinates really? Google says they're filming, including the Bond family estate scenes, took place in Scotland, in Glen Etive, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, described as the breathtakingly scenic valley in the Scottish Highlands. That's the quote. And it truly is. Glen Etive has been used as a backdrop for many films, including Braveheart, Harry Potter, and The Order of the Phoenix, by the way, and Skyfall. Scotland looks absolutely mesmerizing. Those misty, mysterious landscapes. I'm genuinely curious, is it really that magical in real life? Or do films embellish it just a little? Generally speaking, the UK is overflowing with abbeys, castles, estates. No matter how many adaptations of Agatha Christie I watch, Downton Abbey or Pride or Prejudice, they never feel repetitive. Oh, Seven Dials recently. And overall, the locations in Skyfall don't disappoint. Macau, Shanghai. Bond, like many action films, is about movement and places. Different countries, cities, iconic spaces, just like Mission Impossible. Grand theaters, legendary venues, towering skyscrapers, sweeping landscapes, pure spectacle. Casino Royale. I adore that film. I genuinely can't decide which one deserves first place in my personal Bond ranking. Mads Mikkelsen with that unsettling eye. Eva Green, magnetic. That nerve-shredding scene where Bond doesn't manage to press that button in time after being poisoned. And I'm literally on the edge of my seat waiting for the announcement of the next actor to play James Bond. Haters will say this kind of films are unrealistic. And yes, they absolutely are. But we don't watch cinema for realism. Quite the opposite. We already have plenty of that in everyday life. This is something you should know about me. I'm a massive film enthusiast. So there will be a lot of talking about movies, TV shows, actors. Besides discovering new films, I love rewatching the ones I've already seen. There's even a term for it. Comfort watching. Rewatching familiar films, TV series, cartoons. There are episodes of certain shows, including some on YouTube, by the way, that I have rewatched multiple times, even though I know them by heart. There's this deep attachment, almost an invisible thread connecting you to the characters and the story. Some people even fall asleep with their favorite shows playing in the background, or put them on during the weekend after a draining work week, just to switch off for a while. When the plot is familiar, predictable, and the characters feels like old friends, almost like family. Some rewatch older films because what's being released nowadays simply isn't their taste. And for others, revisiting a film transports them back to the time when they first watched it, with their loved ones maybe, with family, when life felt simpler, clearer, more stable. Oh, isn't it sometimes pure torture to find a good show to watch in the evening? You can scroll endlessly, and by the time you finally choose something, you've already finished dinner or fallen asleep. And when you do find a brilliant show, you don't want it to end. Then you have to wait an entire year for the next season. Personally, by the time the new season comes out, I've already forgotten half of what happened before. And bless those creators who include a decent recap at the beginning. Or who don't overcomplicate the plot to the point where nothing makes sense. Of course, you can always rewatch previous seasons if you have a drop of willpower and a generous amount of time. Recently, I wrapped up my Christmas marathon of holiday films. Naturally, that included Harry Potter. Always. What else? Die Hard. Lethal Weapon. Yes, I know. Very unconventional Christmas choices, but that's just my vibe. I'm usually not the biggest fan of romantic comedies, but there is one that holds a very special place in my heart. It's The Holiday 2006. Wonderful Cameron Diaz, Kate Winslet, Jude Law, and Jack Black. It's just so comforting. And that idea of going somewhere completely unknown, it's both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Such a cozy, heartwarming film. The Grand Budapest Hotel. The Mummy with Brendan Fraser and beautiful Rachel Weisz. I've heard something about a possible continuation. Indiana Jones. Pretty much any adventure film, to be honest. There is something deeply nostalgic about watching films like this. You put on a movie from, let's say, 2002, 2005, and there are flip phones, phone booths. It's wild. That was only 25 years ago. There are also exceptionally well-crafted films that I wouldn't rewatch too often. The more intense ones, the emotionally demanding ones. There's nothing comforting about them. They require energy, empathy, emotional investment. Sometimes there is a heavy sense of injustice lingering throughout, or an overwhelming catharsis. And yet, that doesn't make them any less powerful. Sometimes during a rewatch, I notice something entirely new, a subtle detail, or a hidden clue, a small Easter egg. Suddenly, certain plot points make more sense. And you admire even more the craftsmanship of the creators, their meticulous attention to detail, the depth of storytelling, the devotion to their art. Or maybe I'm just being inattentive. It's just like in life, if we could relive certain moments more than once, we would probably understand them so much better. I also love discovering older films. Recently, I finally watched two Alfred Hitchcock classics. North, God help me, North by Northwest, and Psycho. And they are truly masterful. Great films don't age. If a story is compelling enough, it lives on indefinitely. Speaking of recent news, we now have the premiere of Wuthering Heights with Margot Robbie, and I'm still not sure I'm going to watch it. If you're familiar with the original novel, I think you know what I mean. Are you planning to see it? Or is it not your cup of tea? I've heard there's an earlier adaptation from 1992, starring Ray Fiennes and Juliette Binoche. Apparently, after the news about the new adaptation with Jacob Elordi and Margot Robbie, book sales of Wuthering Heights spiked dramatically, which often happens. At some point, I stumbled upon a Swedish-Danish series called The Bridge. If you love detective series, the Scandinavian countries truly have a gift for them. After The Bridge, my love was not the same. I have watched almost every, even remotely interesting crime drama produced in Sweden, Denmark, or Norway. There is something distinct woven into those films, a cultural imprint that runs like a red thread through the narrative. A particular atmosphere, a restrained intensity, a style that unmistakably sets their cinema apart from others. Some films wait decades before I finally discover them, and that's completely fine for me. For example, my time for Game of Thrones came around 2024. Not ashamed to admit it. I remember that frenzy when the seasons were first coming out. You couldn't escape it. Every phone, every TV, every conversation revolved around it. But I resisted. I was absolutely convinced it wasn't for me. I can't even fully explain why, but that's often how we choose what to read or to watch, genre, cast, format. There is always something small that tips the scale one way or the other, attraction or rejection. And you know what? Of course, it completely swept me away. I won't say if you don't like Game of Thrones, you just haven't watched it. Everyone has their own taste. But it turned out to be exactly my thing. And I cannot describe how happy I am that I watched it the way I did, because I had so many advantages. I could binge all the seasons without waiting years between them. I could watch at my own pace. I hadn't read George Martin's books at that point, so I went in with a blank slate. No expectations, no idea how the story would unfold, and that made it more thrilling. Even though adaptations don't always follow the source material precisely, and even when they do, it's still fascinating to see a story interpreted visually. And here, the creator of the universe himself was involved in the production. That alone is invaluable. And by the way, reading the book after watching the adaptation is still an entirely different experience. You always uncover new layers, nuances, background details. The entire universe inside an author's mind can never be fully compressed into a 2-hour film or even 8 seasons of series. Can you imagine how lucky I was not to absorb major spoilers all those years? Some might call it titanic self-restraint, but I think I'm just very good at forgetting things. I often hear people say, I wish I could erase my memory and watch it again for the first time, or I envy those who are about to see it for the first time. Well, that's me. Don't envy me though. I simply have an exceptional talent for forgetting movies. And not because they're bad. It's just how my brain works, I don't know. Time passes and suddenly it feels like a premiere again. My superpower. Of course, I remember the major plot points. It's not a completely blank page. Some films imprint themselves instantly and permanently. But isn't that the essence of true art? We don't walk into a gallery to see something simple and obvious. We go for depth, for complexity, for layers. Each time we look at the painting, we want to discover something new, a different shade, a subtle detail revealed by new lighting or shifted perspective. Cinema works the same way. Although sometimes mood is enough when it comes to comedies or romantic films. They offer something different, a feeling. They don't always require sweeping cinematography, psychologically intricate plots, jaw-dropping landscapes, cutting-edge camera techniques, sophisticated makeup or costume design, or elaborate special effects. They don't need them. They serve another purpose. Ultimately, in my humble opinion, what we go to the cinema for is a feeling. The atmosphere that lingers afterward. The emotion during the viewing itself. If a film doesn't resonate with you, it simply doesn't, and that's that. Interestingly, for some people, comfort watching includes action films, thrillers, or even horror. And of course, Friends remains at the top of the eternal rewatch list, for me included. There is this emotional connection with those characters. You feel like you know them so well, like they're actually your friends. I'm not a psychologist, but it feels like a kind of nervous system regulation, a grounding mechanism, familiarity, a sense of home, predictability that is soothing. I don't think that comfort watching is harmful unless it becomes addictive and starts replacing real-life interactions, routines, or responsibilities. As with everything, moderation is key. Too much of anything can tip the balance, can be harmful. I'd love to know what films or shows you rewatch. Do any of your favorites overlap with mine? What new releases are you anticipating? Or is this even your thing? The silver screen, cinema culture, celebrities, adaptations, books, stories? People have to say movies were better back then, or they don't make films like that anymore. I wouldn't go that far. There are still plenty of remarkable films being made today. F1, Mission Impossible, Dune, and the list goes on. They just look different. And the further we go, the harder it becomes to create a story that feels entirely unprecedented, something that hasn't already been explored in some form. Of course, the visual charm of older films is different. I once looked it up. It's partially connected to the type of film stock used back then. Now we have digital cinematography and completely different pipeline of filmmaking. Remember Alien, 1979? The pre-effects era, pre-digital era, when almost everything were built by hand. Miniatures, like in Titanic or Star Wars, and they still use them, by the way, the miniatures. Massive constructed sets filled with sand, stone, plastic, handcrafted masks, costumes, makeup. Then came the Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Matrix, and humanity suddenly believed in itself. Today, cinema feels limitless. It seems that anything the human imagination can conceive can be translated onto the screen. And any technique works, as long as the story resonates. At the very top of my personal list of directors remains Christopher Nolan. His work operates on another plane. Distinctive, meticulous, instantly recognizable. If I watched one of his films without knowing the director, I would probably still guess it was Nolan. There is something timeless about his films. I recently rewatched the Dark Knight trilogy and thought this could easily be released in 2026 and people would still be astonished. No one would call it outdated. Nolan never disappoints. Speaking of new films, what do you think about the new Avatar? I'm still on my way to watching the second one. One film I immediately wanted to watch after finishing it was Prisoners, 2013, directed by Denis Villeneuve. It left a profound impression on me, especially that atmosphere. And you know, some actors look the same regardless of makeup, role, or genre. And that is absolutely not the case with Jake Gyllenhaal. To me, true acting mastery is when an actor transforms so thoroughly from film to film that they feel like entirely different people. Nightcrawler, Presumed Innocent, The Covenant, Prisoners. Completely different energies. Another actor like that, criminally underrated, is Sir Gary Oldman. Sirius Black, Dracula, Winston Churchill, Commissioner Gordon, the corrupt DEA agent in Leon, the Professional, Drexel with the dreadlocks in True Romance. Have you seen it? Harry Truman in Oppenheimer, Zorg in Fifth Element, and that victim in Hannibal. That's range, that's versatility. In this turbulent world, it's incredibly hard to find balance and stay committed to your dreams. To keep running this exhausting race. Sometimes everything around us feels overwhelming. And sometimes rewatching the same beloved show can keep us afloat, give us just enough strength to continue. Each of us needs a small island of safety and comfort. For some, it's a friend. For others, family. And for someone else, a favorite film, a TV show, a podcast, or a hobby. And that's perfectly okay. I hope you'll find your own anchor, something that keeps you grounded, steady, maybe even wrapped in a little nostalgia when you need it most. Until next time.